This clip from the Self-Unemployed Podcast covers rent to serviced accommodation. Kush Singh explains starting in property with low costs, discussing strategies, financials, and challenges of managing serviced accommodation.
So you mentioned these strategies then that you use that have a lower barrier to entry to what most people think about that is involved in getting involved in investing in property. So tell us a little bit more about the strategies that you used first of all.
Yeah, so my understanding was, okay, I need to replace my income, ideally, from my job. So to do that, I either need to do deal sourcing or some form of rent to rent. So I focused on rent to serviced accommodation. And to be honest, it took me about probably 5 to 6 months to get my first deal from starting the training. So that was a challenge in itself, taking on all the knowledge, trying to process it, learning from other people's mistakes, and then trying to take action, but take the right action, and find a good deal and sort of take it on. And then what I found, Colin, is once you get the keys to your first deal, that's just the first step. There's a lot of learning after that as well. As you know, with service accommodation, there's a lot of things to learn, a lot of things to
a lot of process
implement.
So hang on, so let's just step back, because a lot of people watching this may not know what we mean by serviced accommodation. So can you explain what that actually is?
Yeah, sure. So serviced accommodation is essentially, it's like a hotel but without staff. So if you're a family traveling for holiday or for business travel, anything like that, you can book a whole property. So mine are houses, for example. You book the whole house, you pay a nightly rate, and it's all fully furnished. All the amenities are there for your stay. You just bring your things, you can check in with a lockbox outside. And you have a kitchen, you have everything. So instead of a hotel room with just a bed, you get a whole house. And it's becoming more and more popular, because actually when you look at the value, it's better value than a hotel.
And in a hotel you often don't get a kitchen and things like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So do you often get longer stays as well, sort of, because to rent a place, you need a minimum 6 months for a normal tenancy. But if someone, often contractors, things need to stay somewhere for a month or 2 or 3. And you don't want to spend 3 months in a hotel. Hotels are right for a night or two, but
that's it. Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah. So, and then you said this has got lower barrier to entry. So why is that?
Well, so how it works is you're effectively renting the property from a landlord. So you'll have the costs involved, such as deposits, if the landlord wants a deposit, upfront rent, and then furnishing. So if it comes unfurnished, you'll have to furnish the property, stage it, and by staging we mean making it look nice. So painting, decorating, fully kitting out the place so a guest is happy and has a good experience in the property. So that can all add up. But again, that's subjective. It depends on the size of the property you're taking on.
Yeah. So you're renting the property and you're renting it unfurnished, right? So you've got to pay for all the furniture as well?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. Or we should say my company's renting the property. So it's more like a commercial lease. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the company owns the furniture. So that's an interesting thing, because then, you still own the furniture. So even if things went wrong, you could still use that move that to another property or sell it or so it's a cost, but it's not purely an expense. You're buying assets, I suppose, some assets, but just not the property itself. Yeah.
And even deposits, you'll get it back at the end if you were to give it back. So
yeah, that's interesting. So how much does it cost to? I think you said you've done sort of 3-bed houses.
Yeah,
how much
that's
does something
right.
like that cost to stage and deposit? Give us a rundown of the costs.
So it obviously depends on the amount of rent, but I'd say you're probably looking at about 6,000 to 7,000 all in for a typical 3-4 bed house in terms of.
And where's that mostly going? Can you break that down for us a bit?
Yeah, so if you're paying, let's say you're paying £1,200 rent, then you've got your deposit, which normally the same amount again, so that's two and a half. And then you might have
Hmm.
about four, 3.5 to 4.5 on furniture and staging. So it takes you to around
Right.
6, 7K. But as you say, you do own the furniture. You could lease the
Yeah.
furniture as well. That is an option. I know some people do that.
Mm.
So that is always another way of doing it.
So of that overall figure, what was it you said?
So about 7, 8.
Yeah. So a lot of that is not a lot of the deposits coming back to you, and you still own the furniture, which is the majority of that setup cost.
Yeah,
It's only the rent, the first month's rent, and any
yeah.
cost of decorating and refurbing it if you have to do that.
But then
Um,
the key thing is to negotiate as well. So this is very important that when you do take on a deal, you've done your due diligence, you know your numbers, you know your break even point, so you know what nightly rate you can charge based on
mm,
comparables in the area. Um, but yeah, you need to negotiate. So just going back to the first deal I got a 3 week rent-free grace period from the landlord. So I was actually earning money from bookings before I paid any rent to the landlord. So
okay,
that,
that's
you
good.
can use that to your advantage and say, well, I'm going to fully redecorate, repaint, furnish the property. I need a bit of time to get started. And that normally works quite well with giving you a window of time where you can then, effectively have the property for free almost.
Yeah. So normally a landlord's if they're getting a regular tenant in, they would expect the rent from day one. But you're saying that sort of in lieu of rent, you're going to renovate the place.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And then,
So
what's worked well for me, every time I've taken on a property, I've invited the landlord back when it's fully
mm,
staged and just said, what do you think? And they love it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So why would a landlord not just do this themselves once you've given them the idea?
Yeah, a lot of people say that, but in my experience, they're busy people. Um,
Mm,
they've got busy jobs or they've got businesses that they're running. They're really in it for the long-term capital appreciation from what I've seen. They just want no hassle, get the rent paid, and work with professional people. And actually, when you think of the benefits that we provide landlords, it's kind of a no-brainer. Why would they not give them all to companies? You know?
yeah, because I mean, when you rent a place, you unless you're managing yourself. I mean, if you are, that's a lot of work, and if you're not, you've got an agent. The agent's going to be charging 10-12%. Plus, they might have other admin costs on
Yeah,
top when you get a new tenant doing the paperwork and all that. So it ends up being quite expensive. So I guess that you're reducing those costs for them as well.
absolutely. Yeah. So, we normally look to sign for at least a 3-year contract. And
Mm,
in that 3 years, there's no voids or, no missed payments or anything like that, no management fee. So the rent
yeah.
that's agreed is what the landlord gets for that period
So
of
it's a lot
time.
lower risk from them because they know they've got their mortgage to pay. Yeah, and they know that for at least a set amount of time, they're not going to have any voids. They're not going to have management to pay. They know exactly what their cash flow is going to be
Yeah,
for that
correct.
period of time. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and also,
So
as you know, they're dealing with a company, so it's company in a contract with the landlord. So Section 21, um, which is where Section 21 is issued if a tenant doesn't pay rent, doesn't really come into it because we're not a tenant, we're a company. So if we don't pay the rent, we really don't have any rights past the 7-day period. So they can evict us very quickly as well.
yeah, so Section 21 that's the no fault eviction, right? Where the landlord can say to a tenant, as long as a certain amount of time's passed, they can just say they want the property back.
Yeah,
They're talking about getting rid of that, which is worrying a lot of landlords. But
yeah,
you're saying that with you, they could still ask you to leave or no, as long if you void your contract,
yeah, correct.
if you violate your contracts, yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah, so if a tenant doesn't pay rent on a normal contract, it can be difficult to get them out.
yeah.
Um, it can take a long time.
It's the
During
time,
which,
isn't it?
but with you, they can as soon as you don't pay rent, they can kick you out straight away, sort of thing.
Pretty much, yeah,
Uh,
because we've voided the contract.
yeah, yeah. So it's much safer kind of deal from the landlord's point of view. It's funny how not more landlords sort of know about it in a way? Because
Yeah, I mean, if there's any landlords watching, feel free to reach out. It's definitely a good option for you guys because it's like your house is like a showroom in effect
yeah,
as well.
yes, you mean you're going to be keeping it in much better
Yeah,
condition?
yeah, and we have the
Yeah,
cleaners go in, so actually the level of the standard of the property is kept to a very high level because of that.
yeah,
Because at the end of the day, if we don't keep it in a show home condition, we're going to get bad reviews, and then we won't get repeat bookings, and then we're going to struggle.
yeah.
So that really is important for us.
So you said it took you about 5 months to find your first one, or
Yeah,
get the keys to your first one.
yeah,
Why did it take so long?
yeah. Interesting story, really. So joined the academy, did all the live training, did the online training, went through it all. But then it's like you're in a sweet shop. You don't know what strategy to go down, what to spend your time on, and there's so much information. So
Hmm.
I was looking at all of them, and I realized after a while I'm not focusing on one because even to do one is quite time consuming. There's a lot to take in. So I think at least half the time was due to that.
I just want to quickly say thank you so much for watching or listening. If you are watching on YouTube, give us a thumbs up and a subscribe and all that, and subscribe to the podcast, leave us a review. All those things are super useful. But if you like what you're hearing and you'd like to become self-unemployed yourself, then I'd really like to build a community. And the way that I'm doing that is I've got a free mailing list that you can join. And when we record these episodes, they're going to be put out as live streams. So you'll get to see a little bit behind the scenes. You'll get to see the episodes before they go out on the main channel and on the podcast. And you'll get to interact with us as we're recording. So if that sounds like something you'd enjoy, head on over to the website, links in the description. And I look forward to chatting with you as we record future episodes.
So before you joined the academy, you didn't. At that point, you weren't thinking, "I want to do service accommodation." You were just what were you thinking at the beginning? Just property in general, or did you have any certain strategies in mind?
My sort of going in point was BRR and flips. But
Right.
when you look at the other strategies, and bearing in mind the academy's 12-month program, and a
Mm.
BRR might take you, if 12 months is probably quick for a BRR, isn't it?
Yeah, including finding it,
Yeah,
going through all the legals, doing the renovation, and then
that's
you
it.
normally have to wait 6 months from completion before you can refinance. So yeah,
Yeah,
you're looking at 9 months would be super fast, I think.
yes. So based
So
on
yeah, a
that,
year easy. Yeah, yeah.
based on that,
Plus, you need a lot of capital because you generally need to either buy the house cash or get bridging loans, which is a lot more, or an investor, which again is much more complicated and difficult if you don't know the right people or have the right, or if you've never done it before.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah,
with that in mind, I realised, okay, let me just focus on something that can replace my income from work, and then rent to SA was something that appealed to me. I really like the idea of having a nightly rate instead of a tenant kind of thing.
mm.
And I quite enjoyed the marketing side of it. So optimizing the listing through through Airbnb and Booking.com and creating your own website and that sort of thing. And yeah, you've got the first one. I actually got the first two deals I got within 2 weeks of each other. So I went from a position of
Oh really?
having no properties and just learning to having now two to set up at the same time. So
Okay.
that was a bit of a challenge, but very enjoyable as well, especially when the bookings start coming in and you see actually this thing really works, and I can
Yeah,
go and look at different areas now and replicate it.
yeah. And do you say you got bookings coming in within a month of getting the keys? Is that what you said?
I think within a few days we had bookings coming in.
Oh really?
Yeah, we went
Cool.
live. It went live in the first week of May after having got the keys mid-April.
Mm.
So it was pretty soon after we went live. We had bookings.
And so this was only last year, right? You're saying, or
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And did you say you're going for like 3-year contracts? So you still have all those two properties?
Yes, yeah. So the first, actually, no, sorry, Colin. So the first one, was in Milton Keynes. So that's been sold. I sold that to an investor. So that's now gone. I had another one in Milton Keynes, which was, I think, the fourth one I took on. That's gone back to the landlord. And this is a good learning point to maybe discuss, because you can always do your due diligence on the numbers, but ultimately there is a risk involved. There is a level of risk. And with that one, I found that it wasn't really performing as well as I had hoped, as well as I'd sort of planned in the numbers beforehand. So I got to the 6-month break clause and decided to give it back to the landlord.
So just to be clear, when you say 6-month break clause, you mean in the contract there is a bit that says I can hand it back to you within the first 6 months if it's not going well.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, which is very important, because we don't want to be tied in for 3 years if something goes wrong, or if it doesn't take off as well as we thought.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, again, like we've just previously talked about, so furniture I sold to a friend who was setting up an SA at the same time, so that kind of worked in terms of timing, and deposits came back as well. So really, it wasn't a massive loss, but the learning point is make sure you're using the right contracts to protect yourself.
Yeah.
And
now another thing you mentioned there that some people might be confused about. You said that the first one you sold, but you were only renting it. So explain what you mean by that.
Yeah, so by that I mean sold it as a turnkey investment. So it's still a rent to service accommodation. So the landlord is the same. It's just another person who's doing what I'm doing is now taking over. And because it's a going concern, they've paid me a fee to take on that property. So so basically all the work that you've done in setting it up and in negotiating with the contract with the landlord, you effectively packaged and passed on to somebody else. Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Thank you so much for watching. If you're on the journey to becoming self-unemployed, taking control of your financial freedom, then you're in the right place. If you enjoyed this video, then don't forget to give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment below. We'd love to hear your thoughts and questions. But more importantly, make sure you head on over to our website and sign up for the mailing list. The link is in the description. By joining, you'll get exclusive access to our live streams when we record future episodes, so you can be part of the conversation and see behind the scenes. So don't miss out. We'd love to have you join us live, so I'll see you at the next one.